This is a big week of MMA. We've got the UFC, we've got the PFL, we've got the Contender Series, and we also have Road to UFC. If you're unfamiliar with Road to UFC is a tournament for fighters from Asia to have another opportunity to get into the UFC outside of the Contender Series and being signed straight up. Typically what happens is fighters from Asia that don't really have experience against great competition get matched up against each other, and then being a 8-person tournament, the winners of course end up being pretty good and the best rise to the top. Like Rinya Nakamura, for example, has won this tournament, and other pretty good prospects have come out of this tournament as well over the last couple of years. This one is going to be taking place in the Apex. The winners is now going to be going on to the finals, as this is the semi-finals, and I do believe that the finals is probably going to be during that event in China later on in the year. I don't believe that this is going to be the final order. I think there actually is a potential chance where they have split it into multiple episodes, but it is pretty convenient because I'm going from the lowest weight classes to the highest all in one kind of sitting, so that's pretty easy. It is typically broadcast on UFC Fight Pass. It's broadcast on UFC Fight Pass for me in New Zealand, and that's where Tapology is saying it's broadcast as well in the US. And it will be taking place on Friday night at 9 PM. So pretty late, but it's just because it is pretty good timing for Asia, really. Now, there is a couple of Contender Series sort of style matchups as well. We've got Samandar Murodov versus Jonathan Piersma at 170 pounds. The winner of this fight will probably sign to the UFC because Samandar Murodov has been on the UFC's radar for a long time. And if Jonathan Piersma beats Samandar Murodov, then that is a massive win. Samandar Murodov really popped up on my radar on the Road to UFC tournament a couple of years ago, where he dominated Gansa Kuera to a first-round submission win. Looked very, very good, and since then was actually told that the UFC would sign him, but the problem is he couldn't get a US work visa. So for a couple of years now, he's just been fighting over in Europe, over in Tajikistan, and getting a couple of good wins for UAE Warriors a couple of times, but he's also been competing in wrestling matches as well, and just developing as a fighter. This guy is a very good prospect and is a guy that I have actually regarded as being a future champion in the UFC. That is how high I am on him. He's fought very good competition throughout his entire career. 10-0 opponent, 19-3, 19-4. And now he's taking on Piersma. Piersma is also a very good prospect out of the US. Probably one of the better USA welterweight prospects in MMA right now. 28 years old. He does have one pretty poor loss to Devin Smith, but since then he has just been able to dominate and look pretty good. Now that loss is kind of weird because the referee sort of gets in the way of where he wants to move to get out of it. He gets caught, but he does bounce back very, very quickly and gets a couple of good wins over undefeated prospects, mostly in wins which he is actually winning by using his wrestling. Now, I actually do think that Samandar Murodov is going to be the bigger fighter out of the two, and I also think that he's going to be able to out-wrestle Jonathan Piersma, and that's why I'm going to pick him to win this fight, and I think if he does win, and win impressively, you will see Murodov in the UFC. Another bonus fight is Qihui, who is fighting against Danni McCormack. This is an odd fight for McCormack to take, in my opinion, because she's moving up a weight class now to Qihui, who is, although only 5'3", pretty big for the weight class still nonetheless. You know, she's quite small, but it helps her a lot just being a dominant wrestler. Now, she hasn't fought very good competition at all in MMA, but she did give Karina Silva a pretty tough test. It even took her down in the first round and arguably won the first round of her Contender Series fight. She didn't fight much at all since then, but she did come back to Lisa Koreakawa, where she was able to use that wrestling to squeak out a very close win. I think if she wins this fight over Danni McCormack, she probably gets signed. I think if Danni McCormack wins, she probably gets signed. I don't like the fact that McCormack is moving up a weight class for this. It doesn't really make sense that she's not very big. She is a girl that has won the title at Invicta FC. I believe they did a tournament for that, where she took out Valeska Machado, who has proven to be a very good fighter, and Karolina Wojcik, who is a former Contender Series fighter who I believe has signed to KSW or Octagon now, so very good win there. I do think that Qihui can use her size advantage here and actually win using that wrestling, and that is why I'm going to pick her to win. Now we can move on to the tournament fights, so now these fighters, if they do win, they can now move on and be in the finals. We got Feng Xiaocan fighting against Miki Motono. This is a rematch. Feng Xiaocan has actually already beaten Miki Motono, and somewhat recently. Now, there is going to be a massive size discrepancy in this fight. You can see it in the first fight that they have. Miki Motono is so much smaller than Feng Xiaocan. It is not even funny, to be honest with you. And I do think that we should probably just see that be a very big factor. Now, Miki Motono is a solid grappler. She even took down Feng Xiaocan in their first fight and looked pretty decent, but Feng Xiaocan was able to end up getting the submission. I do think Xiaocan is going to be the better striker, and I do think that she should be able to use her striking to find the win in this one here. Miki Motono didn't need to fight in the first round because her opponent, Huaxiang, actually missed weight. So, because she missed weight, Miki Motono just moves on to the semi-finals because this is a tournament. But I do think that Feng Xiaocan is going to win. I think she looked pretty good in her fight against Singh, even though that was a pretty bad mismatch, let's be honest. But I think that we are going to see Feng go out there and get the win. Then we have Dong Huaxiang fighting against Shin Ming. I think Dong Huaxiang actually looked somewhat disappointing in her fight against Piersma. She is a girl that I think has actually been developing at the UFC PI in Shanghai for years now, because although I did somewhat struggle to actually find tape on her, I did find her a lot in Shanghai PI promotional videos, and her talking about how she's been at the Shanghai PI for so and so many years, and she's been developing and getting better and doing all this and that. And then I watched her fight against Piersma, and I watched some fights against, I think I was actually able to watch this fight, and I wasn't all that impressed, I'll be honest. Dong Huaxiang is a decent wrestler, but against Piersma, she really looked into the striking, and she just was the better striker out of the two. It kind of was as simple as that, but I still was a little bit disappointed with the performance, I will be honest with you. Now, Shin Ming did look pretty decent against Yamdam-seo. Yamdam-seo is a very scrappy striker who is a grappler as well, and she was able to get that win there. Before that, kind of just the same sort of story with the regional scene over there in China, beating and losing to not really the best competition. She is also a wrestler with a bit of striking as well. I just think that the more polished prospect is the prospect that has spent years. I believe she's been at the PI since she was 21 in Shanghai. The one that has been spent years at the Shanghai Performance Institute developing is going to win the fight. I'm going to pick Dong Huaxiang to win by decision, but I don't know if she's going to beat Feng Xiaocan, so I'm very interested to see how that goes. Now, Kiru Sahota will be fighting against Ruel Panales. Ruel Panales is another fighter that actually didn't need to fight in the first round because his opponent missed the weight against Tokitaka. I don't know how I feel about Ruel Panales, though, because I do just feel like he is quite one-dimensional. Like, he's been out-wrestled in, of course, all of his losses, but he was also out-wrestled against Murodov, who is 1-2 as well. Not that long ago, in 2022. Kiru Sahota is a little bit of an interesting fighter because he is big for flyweight, but he is a little bit sloppy, I think, on the feet. But where he does get most of his work done is in the grappling. He had a very close fight against Choi, and that really could have gone either way. It was a close one, but we did end up seeing Kiru Sahota actually go out there and get that win. I think that Ruel Panales is going to be the better striker out of these two. I have actually been very impressed by the striking of Ruel Panales in the tape that I have managed to watch. But I do think that we're just going to see Sahota wrestle. That is the way to beat Panales. Panales has very, very good kicks. But I think that Sahota can just kind of eliminate all of that by wrestling. And that is how I think he gets it done. I think he wrestles in this one here. I think he might even find a submission because I just don't think that Panales' grappling is anywhere near as good as the striking. And that is the pick there. I'm going to pick Sahota to win by submission. Now, Dong-Hoon Choi is fighting against Angad Bisht. This is a close matchup that I actually could see going either way, and I think that the winner of this fight probably wins the whole tournament, but I have been most impressed by Angad Bisht. I don't think that Angad Bisht's striking necessarily is very great. It's not very technical, but it is effective as he has been able to show that he has got pretty big power. My problem with his striking, though, is that I do think he's quite hittable, and he is welcoming of a bit of a battle, of a bit of a brawl, but where he does end up getting most of his work done is by using his grappling. He is very big for 125 pounds, very well built as well, and he just uses that size to out-wrestle and outgrapple his opponents. He looked very good against John Dave Almanza when it got down to the ground, but on the feet, I did think that he still was kind of getting hit with some big shots. He was trying to land some big shots, and you kind of have seen that throughout his career. He is the champion over at Matrix Fight Night, which is an up-and-coming Indian regional promotion, which is backed by quite a few Bollywood stars. There's actually a lot of money going in behind that promotion. They've done a few events in Dubai as well, so kind of very interesting promotion to follow. Donghoon Choi is a very powerful striker. He has kind of gone to war a little bit, a couple of times. I think he went to war with Kenta Kubo. He had to really dig deep in that matchup to get the third round finish, and then he did just beat Naoyushi Wada very, very early on into the fight, I believe early into the second round. Jenisuly apparently broke his hand in the first round, and a lot of people were trying to argue that Jenisuly probably won the fight. I think it was close. I mean, it really was, but I thought that Shui was landing like the more damage, but Jenisuly was kind of looking a little bit cleaner. It was a very, very close fight to score, but we did ultimately end up seeing Shui win. I don't know how good Shui's takedown defense is. It has looked pretty decent at times, but he's going to have to deal with the pressure of Angad Bisht and also the grappling of Angad Bisht. And I think that Angad Bisht's size is probably just going to be a little bit too much here. So I'm going to pick Angad Bisht here as the underdog on Tapology a lot. I think Angad Bisht gets it done. I think he does out-grapple Shui in this matchup. Then we can move up to the bantamweight. We have Su Young-yu fighting against Daermisi Zhawupasi. Kind of a little bit of a mirror matchup here, as Su Young-yu is a grappler, a wrestler, and Daermisi Zhawupasi is a wrestler as well. I do kind of refer to Daermisi Zhawupasi as the bantamweight Khamzat Chimaev from China, because that's how he fights. He goes out there and he shoots for takedowns over and over and over again. He is incredibly aggressive, but he does lack the cardio, well, like Khamzat Chimaev. That's how he does have his one loss to Chung Ho Lee. He was looking good, he was getting takedowns, but he ended up gassing out. Since then, he did come back to Ren Ozaki, where he actually looked pretty good on the striking after Ren Ozaki slowed down after the first round. Ozaki was looking good on the feet, but ultimately did gas out a little bit, and we were able to see Zhawupasi push forward a little bit more. He does take on Su Young-yu, who had a very impressive round number 1 victory, where he defeated Shohei Noze by out-grappling, who is a very talented grappler. This is a very tough fight to predict. I think it's close. Su Young-yu, I think, does have a very similar stylistic matchup to Daermisi Zhawupasi, where he is a guy that is going to want to go out there and get the takedowns. I'm just going to triple check. Why was this? Okay, interesting. But anyway, Su Young-yu, he's a guy that wants to dominate and top control. He does have good cardio. He did look good against Shohei Noze. And I think that in this matchup against Daermisi Zhawupasi, I think his grappling is going to be threatening enough where he should be able to reverse and get on top. I'm going to pick Su Young-yu. I've seen a lot of people out there picking Su Young-yu to win the whole thing. I think it's pretty close, and we'll see who can get it done between Tokitaka Nakanishi and Balgyn Jenisuly. This is also a close one. I actually do like Balgyn Jenisuly to win this matchup, though. He's looked pretty good since the tournament, which he had a pretty close fight with Shuya Kamakubo. In the first round, he got eliminated, but he come back. He took on Xavier Alaoui, who is now signed to the PFL and is a Canadian prospect. Saltenbeck, okay, losing record is what it is. And then Yunfeng Lee was kind of just an easy win for him, and he did dominate that matchup, as you can kind of expect. Tokitaka Nakanishi is a fighter that I am pretty excited about. I do kind of like his style. I think he's pretty fun. I wanted him to actually be on the Contender Series this year, but it turns out he got the call up to the road to UFC, so that's pretty cool. He did beat Kusum Kim. Kusum Kim was just a really tall striker that was pretty low volume. It wasn't a fun fight to watch, really, like at all. And I think that Balgyn Jenisuly can actually go up there and take down Tokitaka Nakanishi. Now, I do understand that Nakanishi does have a wrestling background. He does have a judo background. But I think that Jenisuly's pressure on the feet should be able to kind of get things going. And I'm going to pick him to win as well. Now, Jibin fights against Masuto Kawana. And this might be a little bit of an... Okay, I didn't expect most people to be picking Jibin there, but I am going to be picking Jibin. I think Jibin's a very good prospect. I thought he looked very promising against not Zhang Yang Li, but against the fighter that he fought against on the Contender Series quite a few years ago in Olivier Murad. In fact, I would argue that he beat Olivier Murad, and then he lost, so he had to be on the road to UFC, and then ran into Zhang Yang Li, who is a somewhat promising prospect now in the UFC, has found some missed success. I mean, he got KO'd by Emil, but before that he did beat Blake Builder. He's gone on a good win streak. He's looked very good now in his career so far, and he did look pretty decent against Yubajeli, who is just kind of a low volume striker, but Yubajeli does win all of the tournaments in China at like JCK, Juchangfeng, which is interesting. But Masuto Kawana is the opponent. Masuto Kawana is a very good wrestler who, prior to fighting against Young Jae Song, was actually just struggling to take his opponents down and hold them down. You can watch a lot of these fights. I believe they're easy to find on YouTube. And he's wrestling these opponents, but he's struggling to hold them down. He's struggling to keep them down. And he doesn't really struggle too much to do it against Young Jae Song. Now, that was a close fight where Masuto Kawana was getting hit quite a bit on the feet, but he was finding the success in the wrestling. Benji, I think, is well-rounded everywhere. He is training at the UFC PI in Shanghai, and those guys over there are really getting some good development out of these prospects. And I think that Shibin is one of the better kind of prospects to come out of that program. And I think that he is going to ultimately go up there and find the win. I think he can look pretty good on the feet. I think he's the better striker. The grappling is going to be a little bit of a concern, I think, with the wrestling of Masuto Kawana. But I do think he can go out there and get it done and keep the fight on the feet. Now, Shin Haraguchi fights against Zhu Kangshui. And Zhu Kangshui is a very, very good prospect that I definitely underestimated the first time around. Because Zhu Kangshui has improved drastically in his career. I mean, this guy went out there against Tatsuya Ando and looked like a future champion. That is how good he looked against Ando. He was just beating up Ando, was landing some massive shots on him as well, was defending takedowns, and was just looking all around like a great prospect and a guy to keep your eye out for. Shin Haraguchi, on the other hand, is a multiple-time, I believe maybe just a one-time World Freestyle Wrestling Champion. I believe he's a multiple-time National Wrestling Champion for Japan. And you can see it in his fights. He is a very, very good wrestler. But the problem with him is he only has wrestling. It's like his striking is just never developed. And he just is wrestling. You know, he has kind of shown that it's all he's got. Now, he did fight at 155 pounds last year, where he was severely undersized. And that was shown in his loss to Rongzhu. And then after that, he has gone down now to 145 pounds. And he did just kind of dominate Jun Jong Hong in a decision, but it was very boring, man. Like, all he did was take him down, control him, didn't land any ground and pounds, didn't go for any submissions, just kind of the same old Shin Haraguchi. And although I am a big fan of Shin Haraguchi, and I do think that he could be a very good fighter, it does get tiring just watching his fights, man, because that's all he does. And that's concerning, because that's all he has is wrestling. He doesn't have anything else. Now, the question is, can Zhu Kangshui actually defend the takedowns of Shin Haraguchi? Because Shin Haraguchi is an incredible wrestler. You know, he's looked so good throughout his entire career so far. But I think on the feet, it's not close. And I think if Zhu Kangshui can keep the fight on the feet for like 8 out of the 15 minutes of the fight, he's going to win the fight. So that's kind of what I'm going to go with here. I think Zhu Kangshui is the pick. I think Zhu Kangshui can get it done on the feet. Can he knock out Shin Haraguchi? Shin Haraguchi showing that he had a good chin, although he did lose to Rongzhu. Man, he took some shots. But Zhu Kangshui is just so much better on the feet, and I was so impressed by him then, man. And also another thing is, Shin Haraguchi still looks undersized, even moving down a weight class. So kind of hard to pick on that too, and that is the pick I am going to be picking. Zhu Kangshui to win this matchup, and I think he's going to get it done on the feet. So let me know what you think of these picks in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.